important. Now we come down to self-reflection. So what is self-reflection? So self-reflection, so let us see the definition first of self-reflection. What is self-reflection? So self-reflection is a set of abilities and skills to indicate, the talking of a critical stance. It is an orientation of problem solving or a state of mind. So obviously it is, to do with the abilities, the skills that we possess as human beings. And of course, we have to be critical about ourselves, because obviously self-reflection is, we need to be critical. Unless that we are critical, we'll never be able to solve the problems that we are facing in our life. So it's a state of mind, it's a state of affair. And so we need to really know who we are and identify the needs in our life and make sense of all the informations and all the feedbacks that we get. We have to be very, be aware of the context and the experiences that we have in our lives. And yes, and of course, when we talk about personal reflections, we also need to know our priorities. We need to know our strengths. We need to know, we need to be very well aware of the time management, how good that we are, how motivated we are, what is the direction that we need to follow in our life, what is the action plan, what do we need to do action plan, identifying problems, what are the problems in my life and how I need to work upon those problems, what are the weaknesses that I have and how I need to, develop on those weaknesses. So of course, it involves the slowing down process. We need to slow down. We need to accept our life the way it is, examine your life, analyze your life, all the complexities, sit on it, pause on it, then think, analyze it, use your cognition, use your intellect, your intellectual capacity to synthesis is putting together everything, all the past, the present, and the future that holds for you. Synthesize all these, the past, present, and future, and then evaluate what is it that I really want to do in life, the different functions, that life holds for you. So not everyone is reflective. So we need to have a reflective state of mind. And for example, because it helps us to structure our life, every daily routine that we have, right from morning till night, we have a certain routine. So let us reflect upon our routine and let us decide, what are the things that we need to do away with and what are the things that we need to, accept and have in our daily lives, so that we move towards growth. We move towards, the nurturing of the self and the growth of the self and definitely the making of the self. And we have to have a very realistic assessment and, ponder upon our strength and work upon our strength. And of course, effective time management is important, and definitely all the negative and the positive feedbacks we need to take from people around us and monitor our progress and critically reflect our own learning and learn from it. So obviously we need to have objectives. We need to have, जैसे जिसको हिंदी में कहते हैं कि हमें हमारे पास हमारा लक्ष्य होना चाहिए. लक्ष्य is very important. So self-development is there, intrapersonal skill. Intrapersonal is, when we talk to ourselves, talking to the self, improving ourselves. Interpersonal is talking amongst when we talk to each other, the communication skills, the analysis that we need to have, understand people around us, understand ourselves, Then comes down, obviously, self, id, ego, and superego. This has to do with Sigmund Freud and his structural model of the mind. Id, ego, and superego is a structural model of the mind to be able to understand like this, that this is not actually the real structure that is there in the mind. This is just a hypothetical theoretization, of the mind, that yes, the mind has, three mental processes, and these three mental processes, which are called the id, ego, and the superego, are a part of our conscious, our subconscious, and our preconscious mind. And this theory of, psychoanalysis, this is a part of psychoanalytical theory that was given by Sigmund Freud. So now let us really understand, what this theory is all about and what are we really doing, and we need to understand. So this is this defines our personality. Every human being has id, has ego, and has superego. We all have it. And so this is a personality trait, that we have within us. So this is the consistent personality, the enduring, and the unique personality. It has to do with the traits, the behaviors, the feelings, the consistent feelings that we show to the world. And it also has to do with the temporary patterns that we manifest, whether it's behavior, whether it is feelings, whether it's certain specific situations. Now we need to understand who Sigmund Freud was. So he was a neurologist, he was a physician, he was a psychologist, and he propagated, he's the proponent of psychodynamic theory. And basically he was the professor in the Vienna University, State University. And definitely techniques that he used, for his psychoanalysis was hypnosis, catharsis, dream analysis, free association, and parapraxis. We also have Freudian slips or parapraxis. We'll just, I'll in successive slides, you'll understand what Freudian slips are. And everything we say, we do, by accident, all the hidden meanings. The Freudian slips are, we say things by accident, we are not even aware of. There's a slip of tongue, but actually that is the deeper inner conscious mind, that we have. And it's coming from the unconscious mind is what we need to understand here. So we have these psychoanalytical theories, the unconscious part of the mind, and that we are really unaware of. The conscious is what we are aware of, but unconscious is something, as children, throughout our early childhood, as we grow up. So this, impacts, the unconscious mind always impacts us as children that we are, and it goes and continues till our adulthood. And obviously these were the ideas that was developed by Sigmund Freud. So Freud used the id, ego, and the superego to try and to explain, how the mind of an individual functions. So these are three essential parts of personality, and we call this the structural model of the mind. And this is a hypothetical model of the mind. But since human beings, kind of manifest these traits and these personalities, and obviously related to these personalities, we also have the personality disorders. So we need to also understand that if id, ego, and superego are not in sync with one another, there can be conflicts in our lives. So let us understand now what is id, what is ego, what is superego, and what is id. So we see that this picture that you see right in front of you, this is the iceberg theory. And through this iceberg theory, we need to understand what is the conscious, what is the preconscious, and what is the unconscious. So iceberg theory is a theory that says that as you stand in front of an ocean and you see a huge iceberg in front of you, and that iceberg, only you can say that just 30% of that iceberg is what is visible to us, and rest of the iceberg falls underwater, which we cannot see. So similarly, the mind has been compared to this iceberg, that as much as that we can see on the surface is the conscious mind. The conscious mind is that mind which is aware of what is all going on about us. So that is the ego. That has to do with our ego, that everything that we are aware of. Ego also has to do with slightly, some part of ego comes in the unconscious mind also. Then superego has to do with the part of that iceberg which is in the middle, that is slightly submerged. This just as much as on the surface, just immediately beneath the surface is the superego. So superego is that phenomena that has to do with our जिसको कहते हैं कि ego, if ego is your reality principle, so superego is your morality principle, and superego is somewhere between the conscious and the unconscious. We are conscious of our superegos, and it is that part of our trait and personality which is under the surface, which is unconscious, which we are not aware of, but it is present right throughout our childhood. As we are born with our ids, and from age as we start growing, ego develops at the age of 3, which is called the phallic age, and then our superego develops at the age of 6, and then it becomes a part of our personality. And the instincts, we talk about the id. Id is the instinctual, the instincts, the instinctual part of us, the primeval part of us, the animal part of us. It has to do with the pleasure, it has to do with the pain and immediate gratification of all our desires and of all our wants, and that immediate. And just like a child, if the child is hungry, the child wants to eat. If the child is thirsty, the child demands. So it is like a complete kind of satiation of the self at that juncture. It works on impulse. It is irrational, it is illogical, it is the the self-destruct in us, and and it also has to do with the basics of life, like respiration, like eating, like sleeping, the everyday things that we are doing. And it has to do with the two life instincts. First is eros and the other is thanatos. It's D here, but it's thanatos. And it has to do with unconscious, it has to do with id. Why? Because eros is the life instinct, Life instinct is the, the respiration, the impulses, the life impulses, eating, drinking, the everyday factor that we have. The ability, and it has to do with the libidos, it has to do with the sexual instincts. Then we have the thanatos, is the death instinct. Then death instinct has to do with the destructive mind, the self-destructive mind, which leads to some kind of anxieties and depressions, and people have killer instincts and murder instincts, and all that is a part of death instinct. So we say that eros is always stronger than thanatos when it comes to id. So we need to work upon ourselves, and we need to see that ego always balances between the id and the superego, because id is the natural instinct. We do not think about the consequences, what I really want to do. And you can see here that this man is a manifestation of a devil, a man with animal instincts and animal-like features. So man is not really a man, because immediate gratification and immediate desires, fulfillment of desires, is not what life is all about. We need to balance our life, and we need to have a reality check. We need to keep social decorum and etiquette and manners, and go by the norms of the society, which is a call of the ego. Ego tells us that yes, this is what you can do, and this is what you should not do. So it is trying to balance your id and control your id. And superego is the morality principle. The superego tells us, like it has the wings, that it is always flying high above. It has to do with those principles who has this morality, who are very with high end of morals, and these people are very principled people, and they say that it is my way or no way. जिनको कहते हैं कि हम सिद्धांतवादी जो लोग होते हैं, like for example Gandhi ji was a person with lot of superego, and obviously he was very idealistic, and he had his own idealism, and he preached and he tried to fulfill it. So obviously one needs to balance, because if one is one has more of superego, one can be very rigid in life. So we need to control this rigidity. We need to have control our instincts, and we need to work upon our egos. That is very important. This is a kind of a self mechanism that we need to build upon ourselves. So ego is the rational, the thoughtful, reality principle, as I just said. Id is the instinctual, the biological urges, the pleasure principle, that immediate gratification of all the desires. And if the desires are not fulfilled, then we can have a lot of pain, we can go through a lot of anxiety. So obviously what really one feels good about is what one does, and we do not bother about the consequences. So this pleasure principle leads to a lot of conflicts and lot to mental disorders, and leads to psychosis, and it develops very early in one's life, and it has to do with the parental control and the kind of life that one leads, and the child grows up with certain qualities. And ego is definitely by birth, id is by birth. So then we have the superego, as I just said, it has to do with the moral standards of the society. We feel guilty. Superego, enables us and, kind of makes us guilty if we do anything, if we do not, obey, because we have certain aspirations in our lives, and we always look up and we want to do the best, and we do not want to, kind of bow down to anything and just go by our rules and our regulations. So of course, if the rules are not followed, we can feel very low, we can feel very guilty. So superego also needs to be controlled, because obviously we cannot just all the time be kind of align ourselves with the rules and regulations. Sometimes we also need to balance our lives and break the rules and break the standards, so that the guilt-ridden self needs to be evaded, and we need to be the real self, and we have to accept ourselves. We have to accept ourselves with all our negativities and things that we do not hold for. So now this is an example that how would the id, ego, and the superego respond to a certain dilemma in life. So should you go out with your friends to a great party, or should you stay at home and study for your psychological exam tomorrow? Now if this is under this condition, the id will always say that I would want to go and have a great party, and I do not want to stay at home, and I do not want to study psychology. What good is psychology? What good is study? A person with the high end id would want to go out and have a great party, and does not bother bother about the consequences. The superego would say, no, I would not go to my friend's party. I would sit at home and I would study, because I have my exam tomorrow. Because ye log siddhantwadi log hote hain, so they're very principled. Then the ego would say that, okay, fine, is going to balance between the id and the superego. So ego, what would ego actually do is, it is going to आपको क्या करेगा, आपको बिल्कुल थामेगा, आपके कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स को ठीक करेगा. एंड द ईगो वुड से दैट yes, let me stay at home, let me study for my exam tomorrow, and then if I have time, once I have completed my syllabus, if I have time for an hour or two, then I can go out with my friends and can also have a party. But if I have not studied, then I need to stay back. So this is the difference between id, ego and superego. So these are the techniques. Now we also have the Freudian slips. What is the Freudian slip? Sometimes, we make jokes, or we have certain dream patterns, we have certain illnesses, and sometimes, we can call our teacher mom, for example. So the teacher is not actually a mom, but there's a slip of it, because in our heart and our mind, we take our teachers as moms. So, there are so many slips every day that we have, which we are not aware of. We can say wrong names and wrong words and wrong phases, but this is to uncover the unconscious motivations. We have unconscious motivations which we are not aware of. So Freudian slips tells us that yes, this is what it is. So all the hidden thoughts come out through the Freudian slips, all the feelings come out, all the repressed desires come out, and everything that has been misplaced, comes out through these Freudian slips. And if we want to really unravel our unconscious mind, if we really want to unravel our real selves, then we can do it via dream interpretation. We can go to a psychoanalyst, we can tell our dreams, and they can help us to interpret our dreams, what the dream is all about, and then we can actually get back to our unconscious mind and can analyze our dreams. And Sigmund Freud's legacy is that of course he has been the proponent of this unified theory, and of course we can understand the various complex human beings that we are, the controversial people that we are, the kind of diseases that a man can suffer from, and mental health problems like neurosis and psychosis. Neurosis is when there's an excess of superego, and psychosis is when there's excess of id. And then psychology and psychiatrists help us, there are medications that help us to balance our id, to balance our superego. So obviously it's a great legacy, and this personality theory that has